perfect surprise attack. If you want, I can log into Twitch or YouTube and see. That is different. Let's see here. Paste and go. Yeah, that does not look right, and it's not loading anything. Huh. Yeah, the RTMP. I don't remember seeing that. And something is a glitch. Oh, the new studio thing and everything. Yeah, the RTMP. I don't remember seeing that. Something is a glitch.
Okay. Cool. There we go. We are live on finally on both Twitch and that other thing. Oh my gosh, why? I just want to get to my channel. Why are you automatically playing a live stream? Gosh. Okay. No, not gonna swear on stream. Okay. Now I'm gonna tweet it all out. This is a multi-step process. Yep. Okay. Alright.
Alright. I am primed to retweet and share the things.
Okay. We are live. We are live with episode 139. And got you tagged, and we're gonna put in a little link to this Twitch shenanigans we've got going on here, and that will make everything official. I believe. Okay, we'll add an image. It'll be the cover art of the game. And there we go. And I'm gonna tweet this out. And then I'm gonna retweet. And then I'm gonna post a link to this dang YouTube to the good old patrons. Just so you know, patrons, I love you all, and I appreciate you all, and I am remaking an entire post that I wrote up specifically for all of you about this live stream that is happening currently because it got entirely erased.
Don't you love when that happens?
I love it. I love it so much, and it's just so good. And
it's like the internet's writing prompt. You already did it once, now do it again with less time.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm so happy. Watch, please. That's what I'm writing for the description. And tags, live guest, Elijah.
Yeah. I'm seeing viewers on YouTube. This is a good sign.
Beahm.
If you can hear me, hello, people of the internet. I promise not to break everything.
I would not make that promise. I do not make that promise.
I said not everything. I did not say not anything. Because always something. There's always something.
It's always something. Okay. Hello, Lucid Bear official. Welcome to this stream. I did not have the chat up. I did not have an opportunity to welcome you. I'm going to pop out this chat, actually, so I can look at you. Your shining emoticon faces in the chat. I just want to pop it out. I guess I have to switch to non-mod settings to pop out the chat. There we go. I did it. I did the thing. And now we are going to look over at YouTube, and I don't know if YouTube can do the same thing. We'll see. It can. So now I have both chats up.
Excellent. I will keep an eye on Twitch chat as soon as the app is done updating, because I decided now would be a great time to update.
Of course it did. That's extremely on brand. Okay. All right. Now we're only 30 minutes late. Apologies. As one might imagine, I'm not super good at live streaming because I don't do it all that often. I'm going to try and get better. We'll see how that works out. Okay. So, I'm going to switch over to our shining, smiling faces. Ta-da! We've got... There we go.
Soiling so hard it hurts. But anyway.
Oh gosh, why is it showing my friend list? Why? There we go. Problem solved.
This is the brand new version of Find Your Friends.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay. So, hello chats. Hello Elijah. Welcome. And I'm gonna start the show unless anyone has just some AMA stuff they wanna ask or talk about in chat or with Elijah. He's a pretty cool dude. Probably doesn't afraid of anything. Probably kills aliens too. Something.
Oh, I have had many things. To be fair, like literally, you can pretty much ask me anything, because I once got quizzed about Abraham Lincoln completely at random. like literally, the guy just comes into the stand and he's just sort of like, "So you know about Abraham Lincoln?" And then after he quizzed me for like a solid 15 minutes, just left. That's the thing that happened. I
feel like that story still needs more context.
Were
you an extra on the set of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
No, it was at an art show. I'm just trying to sell art, and this guy is just... And I'm terrified, but it could have swore one of the things he whispered sounded anti-Semitic too, and...
Oh no! Mr. Lincoln!
But here's the extra confusing thing. He looked like, I'm trying to think of what was his, Ernest or whatever, you know, the comedian whose big thing was going, in all of those really low budget comedies.
Yeah, I'm aware of the resemblance between Abraham Lincoln and Ernest.
Oh no! The guy didn't look like Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
He looked like Ernest, and I don't know why he was quizzing me about Abraham Lincoln. The only saving grace was I had to do a paper about Abraham Lincoln 2 years ago.
So he didn't look like Abraham Lincoln.
No,
he just asked you questions about Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
Okay,
Full
that's
stop, no con.
Really bizarre. Nindrine?
I see that. Yeah. Tell me about Lincoln's childhood home. He lived in the frontier life. That's the thing. Nobody ever really realizes that. But Abraham Lincoln was like, he got brought up redneck style.
He was a simple country lawyer.
Yeah. He did the lumberjacking and everything. He used to just run a general store. The guy was about as humble as you could get. He was not upper class in any shape or way.
Also, pro wrestler. No joke. No joke.
Guy was surprisingly ripped for being as skinny as he was. Like, at the time, he was a giant, and he also had muscles. It just, everybody goes on about Roosevelt being Batman, but if he's Batman, then Abraham Lincoln was Nightwing. Now, I don't know if that
Yes.
that also conveys to the ass area. You're going to have to figure that out for yourself, but clearly his wife was happy.
Okay. So, with that, I am going to start the show, and we're going to talk about games and stuff. This is all right. Can you just count me down? Like, give me a 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, the last one.
I thought you were. By the way, I thought you were counting down with your hands, and I was just like, those are none of those are the right numbers. Anyway, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 139 of The Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week is the lovely Elijah Beahm, or Beahm, or however you said you're supposed to pronounce it, that
yeah,
no one
Beahm
does.
is technically how it's supposed to be done. Just no one ever uses it. Like, literally no one.
Well, welcome to the show, Elijah. It's a pleasure having you here. This is actually the first episode that I've recorded in like 2 months, because I took a nice little sabbatical to. I'm sorry, Swiss Writer. It's not Fire Emblem. It's not. I hope it's not saying that it's Fire Emblem, because I went through what I thought were all the menus and said that it was Knights of the Old Republic 2 discussion.
Oh, yeah, Twitch actually says no restart Fire Emblem GBA.
Gosh dang it. Well, let me fix that real quick.
We're talking about Star Wars. It's not gosh dang it. It's Mother Criffer.
I have never heard anyone say that in a Star Wars.
Republic Comics was where Criff got set up as a thing. Kark was, I think, the Knights of the Old Republic stuff.
Okay, you're already diving too deeply into Star Wars. Just a sec. My entire flow has been. The Sith Lords is actually the first Star Wars result when I type in games.
We do not talk about McClunky. We do not talk about McClunky. Get your roadies arse out of here.
Okay.
Let's hear that Chevette.
All right. So, yeah, this is my first episode being recorded in a while now. And it's nice being back to talk about games and things. And yeah, Elijah, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? Where might people know you from? Like, what's your deal? Why are you here?
I am a guy who has probably talked way too much about games that no one remembers. That is my big deal, is that both on The Escapist at Second Look and both at The Escapist on Second Look and on as a gamer on YouTube, I talk about all sorts of really odd games, all sorts of weird stuff. This year I've been doing Clash of the Tie-ins, so I've been looking at all sorts of tie-in games, finding out there's some surprisingly good ones and some surprisingly bad ones, and never the ones you'd expect. Like, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is actually way better than any of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I don't know how that happened. Like it just
is
it
it
makes
the same story?
No, it's a completely original story. It's completely standalone.
Why? Why?
I have no. Enox basically got to. It's amazing. It's a story about Spider-Man just grappling with mourning and guilt and death. It's like surprisingly deep. They have Stan Lee come in as a character instead of a cameo. Like, he actually has a recurring presence. I'm amazed no one else talked about that one. But that is not what we're here to talk about. Because the thing is, I am very well known for talking and knowing way too much about Star Wars. For context here, I was once in a Jedi Academy role-playing group that was so dedicated we had custom models and skins for our characters. It got deep. It got deep into the amount of I've had people correct me on spellings of things that you don't even want me to go into. I know what flimsy plast is, and thank whatever you believe in that you don't know what flimsy plast is. So I've been on the Star Wars train for a pretty long while, and I wasn't actually. That's the thing I will say is we weren't originally expecting to be talking about Star Wars, but just between Fallen Order and thinking back on Knights of the Republic 2, I'm having a lot of thoughts about Star Wars because I'm gonna be quite candid. I'm kind of burning out on the new timeline and everything. I'm kind of
Really?
yeah. For me, Fallen Order was kind of like the straw that's breaking the camel's back, actually, because there's stuff I've liked. I love Afra. She's one of the best characters, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure we'll get into it. Just like, yeah, I have so many things where I want to see something bolder. I want to see something crazier, which is why I want to talk about Knights of the Republic 2 because oh my gosh, there has never been Star Wars that's been as crazy as Knights of the Republic 2. It just
Yeah.
that was the boldest vision I think we've ever seen for the franchise, and I wish there was more of that. Still, I think that's the series at its best.
So are you talking about being burned out on Star Wars games in particular, or like the entire franchise?
Right now there's pretty much nothing about the Star Wars franchise that's super exciting me. Like The Mandalorian, they've screwed up so much Mandalorian lore with Star Wars The Clone Wars. Like, I mean, no, understand. They went from Mongolian Maori warriors who had this deep, rich history and everything, and they whitewashed them into Swedish people.
That sounds about
And
Hollywood.
yeah, it's just, and the thing is, that's even before Disney took over. That was with Star Wars: The Clone Wars when they did that. And it's they're like, yes, I understand that Baby Yoda is very cute and everything, but eh, yeah, okay, I just, it feels like a lot of the weird that made it fun is kind of gone. Because, and that's the thing I should explain is, for me, I love Star Wars because it gets weird. I love Star Wars because it's bonkers. I love Star Wars because it is willing to be as much a fantasy as it is a western and a sci-fi, and I feel like we lost the weird. I feel like we lost a lot of the creative fun, and I'm worried about that because that's where you find some of the best stuff, and it does lead to divisive things. I mean, I really like that The Last Jedi was at least willing to try some things, but I
Yeah.
worry about more stuff like Solo.
I'm hopeful that when they end this latest trilogy, that's going to be kind of like taking the shackles off, and hopefully that once we hit that point, everything doesn't have to be tied back to Luke Skywalker and the Death Star and Darth Vader. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of where a lot of the Star Wars franchise has gone wrong. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good stuff there, but also some of the best stuff in Star Wars is has nothing to do with those things.
Oh yeah, the ancillary stuff is some of the most fascinating things possible. We've seen stuff explored there that you would never seen. I mean, like to actually take a note from another Knights of the Republic thing. Have you ever read the Knights of the Republic comics?
No, I so my experiences with Star Wars are limited to the movies and to I'm not going to say most of the games, but a good chunk of the higher profile games.
The comics are absolutely worth reading because it explores an idea that I don't know if we'll ever see again. And the thing is, I was actually hoping Fallen Order would do it because it seemed like they were alluding to that, but then it never happened. Where in the Knights of the Republic comic, the antagonists are Jedi. Like they are straight up, not like fallen Jedi. They are just Jedi who are so intent on trying to stop the Sith from coming back that when they have a vision that they think that might imply that their Padawans could be the next Sith Lord, they murder all of them, and the worst one is the one that survives and is now constantly on the run, trying to not get killed. And he ends up with the whole crazy band of things, and it plays just like with Knights of the Republic 2, a lot of inversions of what you normally see. And
Well,
yeah,
that would work so well as a Star Wars franchise by itself, because the Jedi as portrayed in the films are not generally it's or I should say the institution of the Jedi is not necessarily good. And you
oh
can
yeah,
see that
it's
in the movies, but the
mhm.
movies have built also frame them as being good. But you could easily just shift that, like just
Oh
slightly,
my
and it would
gosh.
be horrible villains.
Oh yeah, and that's I think that's even kind of what part of what bugged me about Fallen Order to touch upon it. And by the way,
Yeah,
are
let's
we
get into
clear
it.
on being able to talk about spoilers with Fallen Order?
I think that let's try and have a general discussion first,
Okay.
and then we'll get into spoilers, and then
Yep.
I can that way I can kind of like cut it out of like the podcast version, and then
Mhm.
um, you know, then it can be like a special spoiler discussion on its own. So
I'll,
non spoilers first. What were your thoughts as a
I
Star Wars expert?
I don't call myself an expert. I call myself way too obsessed. But
I mean, thin line.
but I think that one of the major issues with Fallen Order is that it wants to be self-critical of the Jedi Order, but it doesn't really seem to know how to. Like, I mean, Chris Avallone, for fun fact, had a consulting role on this as he did when he was writing Knights of the Republic 2. So he's had a hand in both of these. You can barely tell that I actually be reminded that he had a hand in Fallen Order. Like, they try to say things with the Zepho and stuff like that, but I'm not really sure what they're trying to say other than what was already established with The Last Jedi, which is like, hey, toxic masculinity can also come in the form of stoicism, and hey, sometimes people disappoint you, including if they're Jedi. It's just, it doesn't feel like it ever really wants to go there and just call out the Jedi like Barriss Offee or Luke Skywalker would.
Yeah. So my big gripe with um, my big gripe with Fallen Order isn't necessarily tied into like the lore building of the setting. I felt like I still didn't really understand what the Zepho were, other than like magic MacGuffin
Yeah.
people by the end, which is really not good when most of the game is built around essentially being an anthropological. My words are not good today.
Words are hard.
Dive into what their culture was like. Just like I didn't get them by the
I
end.
actually have more questions. I'm glad you mentioned that because, like, there's that one, and this is not a major thing, just a minor thing, but like, you can find a dead body of a guard who was apparently stealing something that was meant for one of the sages, and it's like, okay, but I have no context beyond this, and they just have his body tossed in a corner. These don't seem like enlightened beings. This seems like I'm, in like some super ancient, highly advanced Radio Shack with less strict morals.
Yeah, I was struggling to find why this why do I keep saying anthropomorphic anthropologist Jedi was interested in them at all, aside from them being super powerful, because they didn't seem particularly.
The powers don't even relate to what's being conveyed. Like, I would understand if like push and pull were somehow related to like characters, like being clingy or being too unbound by earthly possessions or something like that. If there was some metaphorical underlying reason for this, it would excuse the fact that you have to spend most of the game getting to a basic power set.
Yeah, it's also my big problem with it was not the Zepho. Like, that's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
background. It's not fleshed out, but I can live with something like that. But the main journey of Cal Kestis was not fleshed out, and very few things seem to have anything to do with things that happened later, and things that seemed like they should have been important, which this might be considered a spoiler. I don't consider it a spoiler. It happens within like the first 10 minutes of the game. Um, a bunch of Sith inquisitors arrive to kill Cal on the planet he's hiding on, and they kill someone who is portrayed as having known him for several years and like seems kind of like a parental figure to him. And that character dies defending him and is literally never mentioned again in the rest of the game. I have forgotten his name, and that should have been
Prouf.
a
I actually had to look it up. I had to look up. It's Prouf. Who's going to remember the name Prouf? That sounds like, a type of broom.
he should have that should have been an incredibly formative event for Cal, like something that like haunted him for the rest of the game, something that he felt guilty about, and we get nothing. And that's really, really irritating for me because just on a basic writing level, that should have had some impact. And that's kind of my problem with the wider game on almost every major story beat. There's something like that where it's like this should matter, but it doesn't.
Yes. And I don't want to cut you off. It's just like when we get to the spoiler section, there's a part I absolutely have to talk about because Dathomir. What happens there? I'm kind of just. How did no one look at that and go, this seems like maybe sending the exact wrong message from what we want?
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
No, just what you're getting at here. Yeah, it's like as if none of the plot beats were actually planned out together. It's just sort of like we have to have these specific moments, and then
but like there are also ways that it could have been tied together. Like one of the, and this isn't, I don't think this is a spoiler either. You run into Saw Gerrera, who's also in Rogue One, about midway through the game, and he never comes back again. Like he's
literally just leaves.
He's portrayed as like a major figure in the game, and then he just kind of leaves. And there was like interesting tension when he's introduced, like, oh, is Cal gonna go down this kind of dangerous radical route or what? And then nothing happens. Saw Gerrera just leaves and you never see him again.
After he gives you a job offer.
Yeah, he gives you a job offer and then leaves. And then there's I guess the other thing, and I mentioned this on Twitter, but like Cal kills so many people on his quest and never once seems to think about it or consider them as people or really.
There are stormtroopers who will beg for their lives.
Yeah. I mean, granted, like a lot of effort goes into portraying them as the aggressors. But that, yes, exactly. The Swiss writer in chat says non-Jedi are not people. And that's basically what we get in Jedi Fallen Order, because if you don't have force powers in this setting, you don't matter to Jedi. That's kind of what it seems like, because if you have force powers, like you'll stop and have an entire conversation before you try and kill each other, or maybe you won't even try and kill each other. Maybe you'll just be like, I forgive you. And maybe the normal people you're just slaughtering and have absolutely no chance against you deserve that same amount of compassion, or at least consideration.
Fun fact, at this point in the timeline, it's not even like it's clones, which is another thing. They never addressed the whole clone trauma thing. They have like one throwaway line where Cal is weirdly sympathetic. Most of the Jedi were not sympathetic to the clones who mass slaughtered them. But most of the Imperials you encounter, they're not even loyalists or anything. Most of them are conscripts who just want to go home.
Well, and that kind of comes across because you can listen to them just talk about like their daily lives as like before you murder them. Like you can basically sneak up on them and listen to them gripe about their job. And it's just kind of like, I feel like this game was designed to have non-lethal options, and then just decided, nah, people want lightsabers.
Like, that's actually sorry, no, continue.
I don't know. There's a version of this game where events come back around and matter. There's a version of this game where Cal is allowed time to grieve for people close to him who die. and not just one person who died like several years ago.
The handling of PTSD in general in this game is so weird.
Yeah, because I don't know. The fact that the game frames one the death of one person who's close to you as like a PTSD inducing moment and not the slaughter of hundreds of people on your quest for revenge / retribution of some kind. That that would leave a mental mark too.
That's
Pretty
actually a great
sure.
point. That's also something I wanted to point out when I was listening to a lot of this. There's a really violent edge to a lot of the writing here. There's a lot of talk about killing or vengeance or revenge or something along those lines. It's weirdly persistent. Like, that's absolutely the antithesis of what Return of the Jedi was about. Literally, Luke winning against the Emperor was throwing away his lightsaber, whereas in this one, it's framed that at one point, quite literally, that without your lightsaber, you're useless, which is just, in so many ways, not what a Jedi is about.
Right. Exactly. Like part of what's frustrating about that scene in particular is that it's built entirely around like you know they even say explicitly a Jedi is more than a lightsaber at one point in Fallen Order. But then the gameplay and the framing explicitly make that not true.
Yeah. And I also, I just want to say here real quick that what happens in that scene, when he does what he does in response to that, should have resulted in an explosion in his face. A kyber crystal doesn't work like that. I don't know who, because supposedly this game had a ton of oversight to make it be lore compliant, but no, that's not how kybers work. Although I have to say, you know, I want to say in these games credit, it captures the aesthetic of Star Wars really well. We do, to just because we're not completely bashing. It's just like it is really good at looking and sounding like Star Wars. It's just when you think about it, when you stop and step back from that, that's when it starts to really decay way faster than it should.
Swiss Rider writes in, isn't it because the inciting action is violent? He's one of the lone survivors of the Jedi Massacre. And that's an important thing to point out. Like, when this game starts, it's several years after Order 66 goes out, and Cal Kestis is kind of living on the down low. And I would say that partially you're right, but also partially it doesn't seem like he has extensive combat experience. Like, that should still mess him up a little bit.
Yeah, it should still cause him problems. And also, one of the things that stuck out to me in the very opening when what's his name, dies.
Proth.
Yes.
Whatever his name is, it doesn't matter. The game doesn't care. Why should we?
But I don't get why his friend doesn't just say that he's the Jedi, because clearly he's expecting to die. The way he's acting, he's expecting to die. So if he said that, is one of just the things in general. My issue with the intro, and it kind of transcends the rest of the game, is there's just so many moments that are unearned. Because we're talking about how they don't really connect. They also don't tend to have any real emotional build-up. The time between just saving someone, the Inquisition showing up, and then suddenly allies showing up, it happens so fast that it's like, Cal Kestis, you are somehow the least and most lucky man in the entire galaxy.
Yeah, that was actually something that I wanted to ask you about, and thought you might know a little bit more about it than I do. Did they have like some sort of system? Like, does the Empire have some sort of Jedi detection system set up so that if you like use Force powers, they can like descend upon you? Because there was like, he didn't even have time to get home after the construction incident before the Empire shows up.
There's nothing. there's absolutely no lore reason for it. Like there's no
Okay.
explanation, and they don't even establish that. Like if they had said, "Oh, there's an Inquisitor here at the base recently," and Cal showing some worry about that, or so that would make sense. That's what I'm talking about here. There's not even basic building blocks to establish why this is all happening, and how the other two find him. I don't have any idea because like they're showing up as a train's crashing, like and that's the other thing. The game is really weird about hyperspace because understand they make the timing a bit ambiguous in The Empire Strikes Back, but typically traveling between planets in hyperspace can take if you're going across several systems, it might take you a week. In Jedi Fallen Order, hyperspace takes seconds. I don't
I I
understand
have
how that
less of I
works.
have a less of a problem with that just because it's a gameplay convenience.
Oh, I understand. I want to be clear. I'm
Yeah.
to explain why it bugs me because like it's not simply about it being a lore contradiction. It's that it introduces new problems. It raises
Right.
questions about the timing and everything, and that is what would concern. Otherwise, it'd be like, okay, fine, whatever. But because it just kind of works like that, there's so many things where I'm left wondering, well, why don't they do this or why don't they do that? And you don't want that in your story.
I yeah. I mean, the other thing is the game just doesn't have um and maybe I just keep coming back to this. It just doesn't have breathing room for some of these super important
Yeah.
moments, whether they are like violent moments or contemplative moments or just time for characters to just talk for a while in a way that's intentional rather than like the weird like third person optional
Oh yeah,
conversations.
yeah,
I hate
that
that.
is. Oh yeah, it's like, hey, you remember how Dragon Age Inquisition had to resort to this as a last choice? Yeah, now we're gonna just do that for almost all the conversation. And that is another thing too. Is like this game takes from Titanfall 2. It has the two dialogue option things, and in Titanfall 2, you're constantly being asked questions about Jack Cooper. It makes him become a person, whereas
I honestly
Cal
didn't know why I
Kestis,
had dialogue options at
yeah,
all.
it never actually amounts to anything. I want to understand what their plan was here because like I could understand like I understand since everything is trying to be canonical that maybe a game with branching moral choices where it can be light side or dark side is going to be a lot harder. Maybe that's why we
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen a new Knights of the Republic or anything yet. But either way, you could at least allow us to learn about Cal. Give him something because
Well,
like
that's part of what bothered me about the opening. This game really needed that Ray on whatever desert planet she was on, like
Jakku.
in Jakku. Yeah, it needed that slice of Cal Kestis's life while living on his scrapyard planet. Like I needed to see, where does he sleep at night? What does he eat? What what are his interests outside of being a Jedi? Like
Great question.
what does he like to do? Because he's been laying low on this planet for like 4 years. Um, like what? Who is he outside of Jedi? And we don't really get that in this. Like literally, the most important and only important thing about Cal is that he is a Jedi, and that's kind of it. Like I don't know what are his other defining characteristics.
I have a
Like
perfect way to actually to frame this with another franchise. Imagine if Harry Potter started with "You're a wizard, Harry." Like literally, just the family's just camping out in this remote place for no reason.
yeah, you don't
Some
know who
random
the
guy shows up.
Dursleys are. You don't know who's like what his family life is. It really recontextualizes the entire thing to not know those things.
And what makes this all the more ironic is that Disney actually had a story with a very similar premise. I mean, mining colony, guy who used to be a Jedi and everything, and it did have that set up. It's A New Dawn. It's a prequel to the Star Wars Rebels series. Coincidentally,
I thought you were gonna say. I thought that was gonna be a really smooth transition into. It's called Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2: Sith Lords. Guy who used to be a Jedi, mining colony. Bam.
Yeah, why is it with Jedi ending up on mining colonies? Like that's just, it's like that's their convention center. But not the it's the irony is that but the coincidentally the guy who wrote the book, same guy who wrote the Knights of the Republic
Wait, what's
comics,
his name?
John Jackson Miller.
Okay, that's not the name I heard. Go on.
But yeah, with that book, he's exploring Kanan Jarrus, and it does set up Kanan. We learn about what he used to be, why he is, his habits, and everything. We get a sense of his personality, and it makes him infinitely more likable. And that is the confusing thing is that we've seen this exact story done in a bunch of different ways, and when we get to the spoiler portion that goes even further. It actually gets worse with one thing, with the game's MacGuffin. But I won't say more till then.
I will say that I adored Greaser in this game
Interesting.
because he was the only character that I felt was like genuinely well-rounded. Like you knew what he wanted, you knew where he was coming from. He had a life outside of being a pilot. Like he was actually the most fleshed out character in the entire game, and that's weird. Like
I had the same experience, but with Second Sister. Like, seriously, I wish the game just starred her because I'd be so much more infinitely interested.
well, but like here's the thing, like you throughout the game you're not collecting anything that Cal likes. You're collecting seeds that Greaser likes.
Yep.
You get wrapped up in some of Greaser's problems that he deals with personally. Like you're on his ship. Like everything that you experience, almost like everything you experience in Fallen Order is actually Greaser's stuff and desires and priorities. I don't know what any of the other characters really care about or are interested in, or like even like even little details. Like I wanted to see what each person's cabin was like,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't get that. I think that would have been super interesting.
Imagine if you gain trophies on your exploration. I mean, even Call of Duty Black Ops 3 lets you gain little trophies that you can customize, how you lay them out and everything. Like, if Call of Duty is doing a better job of letting you give personality to the protagonist, you've got a problem here.
Um, so how do you want to do a spoiler talk? Do you want to have that now and then we'll cut it out, or do we want to save that for the end?
It's fresh in my mind right now, so I'm good for us having it now and then cutting it out for, for later, if that's not too much trouble for
Yeah,
you.
let's do it.
Okay.
This
This
is
MacGuffin was already
wait.
hit.
This is spoiler time. If you're watching live, it's time for spoilers for Jedi Fallen Order. So probably come back in like 15 minutes. Okay, go.
This MacGuffin was already in a comic under 2 years ago. Like, seriously, in the Vader comics, they have him find this holocron. They hand wave it away in the game, and that, oh yeah, Jocasta knew, well, she just liked this random anthropologist guy. Yeah, I can't say it right. Who she just gave him a copy of a holocron with all of the potential Padawans in the galaxy because, yeah, seems legit. And the fun fact is, in the comic, Vader smashes the holocron. He doesn't want the competition because Palpatine will just get more apprentices from that. So the grand irony is, after the finale where they're running from Vader and everything, the only difference from if they had lost the holocron versus if they took it along is that Vader would have smashed it instead of them. The entire plot has absolutely no reason to exist.
I'll go out on a limb and say, like, it does have a reason to exist just because not everyone has experienced the comic. But also, the ending of this game was such a cluster fluff. It was I have like I think the last third of the game I just was consistently baffled by. Like, so I was kind of going along with things all right. I was just kind of like, all right, where's this gonna go? And then we got to Dathomir Part 2.
Oh gosh.
And Dathomir Part 2, the first time you go to Dathomir, you meet this old man in a black robe, and you're just kind of like, well, this is Star Wars shorthand for this man being evil. But I guess we'll find out more about that later because he stopped talking to me. So you come back and you find out that this guy is a former Jedi who survived the Purge and has just gone cuckoo bananas. And like, basically, Heart of Darkness, Colonel Kurtz kind of style. Like he has been massacring the native population of Dathmiris and just like it's pretty bad. He also carved a weird symbol into his chest.
Not to mention though that Cal is sure to get in on the genocidal list niche too. I mean, he wipes out an entire tribe of people, and we don't even acknowledge it.
Right, exactly. Like there's I felt like there was so much potential in this encounter, and I felt like this game should have gone in a very different direction from this point on. But essentially, Cal meets this person and is just like, "Oh no, you're bad because you killed a bunch of Dathmiri," and I guess maybe Cal's different because he did a lot of his murdering in self-defense, quote unquote.
Not always. Remember that they try like 3 times. Mirren the Night
To tell him to leave.
Yes, they just keep. They're like, we're locking our front gate. We told you to leave. We literally just keep throwing scouts at you. Why don't you leave us alone? And the thing is, it's not even like Cal couldn't have just had them fly the ship over and jumped into the temple. Like, there's no reason he couldn't have just jumped aboard, because we've seen that he can do that.
Yeah.
So they could have just had the ramp, jumped into the temple, left the Dathomirians alone, because their culture has already been desecrated enough as is.
Yeah, they've over the course of this game, they've actually been like the target of genocide officially twice. Like the Empire came in and killed almost all of the Night Sisters, and then the second time was from this fallen Jedi character, and
Oh, well, I should clarify. The first time wasn't the Empire. That was actually the Separatists. Back during the Clone Wars.
Okay.
That was one of Dave Filoni's brilliant, hey, yeah, I'm going to introduce this concept from the Legends lore, and then I'm going to kill it because reasons.
Cool. So that happened, and then the fallen Jedi happened, and then Cal happened, and I guess technically Cal's killing spree was just mass murder because he wasn't specifically trying to wipe them out. I don't know. Anyway, it's bad. It's bad all around.
Terrible optics on the entire situation, and just that is the moment where I'm like, how did no one look at this when they were writing it and go, won't this seem kind of suspect?
The only reason it's not horrifying is because they didn't model children for this game.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about how to warn people about it because I didn't want to spoil it on Twitter. And it's like, do you remember that bit in Attack of the Clones? They do that, except it's somehow worse because they don't acknowledge it. I think that's the thing that bugs me the most, is that it's not even like they ever address it. Instead, they're setting up Mirren after you've wiped out her whole tribe as a potential love interest for you in the next game.
Yeah. Anyway, so you get into this temple and you duel this Jedi, and it's a cool fight. But also it just, part of it is the guy has, I don't see any reason why Cal would not be taken in by this guy's arguments.
Oh, there's absolutely no reason for him to disagree. That's the weird thing. Like, they even actually have a fairly charming guy as the voice actor. Like, they make him sound a little bit crazy, but he also sounds like Ser Jorah from Game of Thrones. It's just sort of like, I'm expecting him to go Khaleesi when he looks at Mirren.
Yeah. Like that felt it felt weird for Cal not to be taken in by his arguments. But anyway, Cal kills him and he's never mentioned again. And it feels like he should have. This is another character that should have had a very deep impact on our young fledgling Jedi. And on top of that, Cal then recruits the Night Witch, the Night Sister, to join them, which is never paid off. The only thing she does after joining them is make the ship invisible. And does it poorly because they do it after they've already like warped into eyesight of the enemy ships.
Oh, and did you notice that once they fire off the escape pods stop being cloaked like halfway through? Like they're not
Yeah.
into atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's just. And Night Sisters can do some insane things. They can bring people back from the dead, and they have you doing the most mundane things possible. And she's joking with these people. She's barely known them, and she's already making casual humor. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of a thing Star Wars characters do, but she's barely known them, and she's acting like she's a character from Mass Effect 1 in Mass Effect 2.
I wanted more stuff to come together for the final assault on the Inquisitor base. I wanted, like, that would have been a perfect opportunity for Saw Gerrera to come back in. It would have been a perfect opportunity for the Night Witch to help them assault the base. Like, that could have been really cool and interesting, and it just didn't happen, and none of those things were really connected thematically or even on a textual level. It was just
And
nothing.
I want to add here real quick that for the record, all the planets from the Legends timeline are still technically canon in the new canon, okay? So they had like 5 different other locations they could have set this place on that would have been just full of lore, perfect for a Sith base to be set on. And instead, they literally come up with a world that is just water, named Nur, which I'm assuming is the noise that whoever came up with this idea made when someone was like, well, why not Korriban or Biss or Ossus? All these different places that we have just sitting around that in other books we've implied and other media have implied might be of meaning. And it's like, no, it's just literally the middle of nowhere with no real opportunity to do anything other than be like, hey, you have a rebreather, you can go underwater.
Also, there's like a weird throwaway line when you're inside the base where Cal observes that it's way more advanced than what the Empire has. And I was very confused. Was like the implication that it was like made using like Zepho technology or something, or
I have no idea what that line was about. I swear I think it came from a different script because there's nothing there you've never seen in any other thing. And also, can I just say how weird it is that there's a fortress where the most guarded room that has the most space to it is an interrogation room? Like, we saw the Death Star. An interrogation room is the jail cell. You don't create this giant mausoleum
I mean,
just to get the truth out of someone.
maybe that's like the special like Inquisitor torture chair. Like maybe they need a very special one to make an Inquisitor. That's the old, like, maybe it's at a nexus of like dark side energy or something. I don't know.
If
But
they wanted to do that, they also created a place for that. They've established that with another Vader thing. It's like, oh yeah, Mustafar, some random mining plant. Now it's a place where the dark side literally bleeds out of the ground. Apparently, I don't know why, but that's a thing they added specifically in this timeline.
cool. All right. So, yeah, and I think at the end, like, I was horribly disappointed with the fact that they just decided to destroy this holocron after Cal has literally killed hundreds and hundreds of people to get it, and he has, like, embarked on this huge quest for literally no reason except to get this thing, and he just decides to drop it. Like, I
It literally it would have been better if he had done nothing.
well, and that's the frustrating thing, because ultimately to me, that was like the narrative equivalent of no, none of that mattered. None of that mattered, and yeah. So what are we doing now? That they literally just they end it like that. They literally are just like, so what are we doing? Where are we going? It's like, well, Cal, you would know if you hadn't destroyed that holocron. You would know where you're going. And maybe, just maybe, it would have been a good idea to keep that around so you could try and protect those children that are now completely unprotected against the Empire, and who the Empire is going to find. Like, they found you within, like, 20 minutes after you used a force power. You think those kids are going to be better off, Cal?
Oh, and just this whole every single vision Cal has is so forced. Like seriously, his flashbacks to his training, his
Forced.
master. Yes, that was a genuinely unintentional pun. They're rare with me, but that one was genuinely unintentional. But yeah, just everything about those flashbacks is so like I can give absolutely no shabbat about his master. There are no criffs to be given about this guy who honestly seems kind of like an unemotional jerk. Like, I would not want this man to be teaching me how to use the Force. There's nothing about him that screams, yes, this is the man I want to follow into battle. The giant guy without a nose who doesn't do anything. And
He. I'm trying to think, like. He would have been. I guess I'm partly confused why they kept it as, like, this big reveal scene of what happened, because it didn't seem particularly heinous or wild,
noteworthy.
or I mean, it was noteworthy to Cal, but in terms of, like, us as people who are relatively familiar with Star Wars, like, it's not a surprise. That's exactly what we thought happened to him.
I don't know why that isn't the opening moments of the game. Like seriously, it just we have so many games where it's okay, and now here is the contrived reason you don't have your powers. Like I can understand them doing it that way, but instead in reverse, it feels like okay, so is this going to be a test of our skills? It's like nope, nope. You're just going to be carried along a very linear path. Okay, then why is this here? Like on a mechanical level, as a just a pure gameplay level, there is no reason for pretty much any of those sequences to exist. Especially since the temples, I really think, should be the places where you learn to use your powers. Make it be organic. Don't rip us out of the experience and listen to Cameron, what's his name, try to sound like a little kid, which is not great. Also, can I just point out here that they cast the frigging Joker as a Jedi and then make him be as unemotive as possible?
Yeah, it was not great. There's so much I want to like about this game, but it's also really hard because the thing I care about most in games is story and storytelling, and this game was very bad at that. Like, it was a well produced and well presented bad story.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's got the Final Fantasy 13 problem, but I'd argue possibly worse.
So, yeah, any other things you want to bring up about Fallen Order?
Just that second sister is way more sympathetic than pretty much anyone else there. Like, I want to say that because like her master is an idiot and and I want to point out they never acknowledge what happened to the younglings that she was protecting when Ciri sold her, because it's like it's not just that Ciri, I keep wanting to call her Ciri, but Ciri, sells her out, but also sold out all of those younglings. We never find out what happened to them. I
See,
don't know how.
here's what would have been a great reveal. You find out after having fought through a bunch of the sisters, and you get to the second sister for the final showdown, and she reveals that you have killed all of the younglings.
Oh, that would be fantastic. That would be
They were all of the sisters.
Yeah. I don't know why they call them second sister and fifth brother and all that. It's weird. I don't know why that didn't used to be a thing. They used to just have the title of Inquisitor.
Hmm.
But regardless, I just don't understand what they're trying to even like convey with the Inquisition, other than that I feel so much worse for these people. Because like when you're confronting the ninth sister and she's talking about the trauma she's gone through and everything, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you. It's like what you see with Katra in the new She-Ra series, except without any real handling of those themes of trauma. It's just sort of like, yeah, this is more about that theme of trauma that we keep trying to talk about, and now we're just gonna glaze over it and keep going because, like, oh, to have the gall to kill Second Sister at that in that moment, that pisses me off. Like that is the one thing that
Well,
just
and that's the other thing. Seer, I'm not going to say needed to die, but she needed to be. She should not have been the badass at the end.
No, she should have
Um,
faced consequences.
well, either faced consequences or been like, hey, I would love to participate in this with you, but also I'm a coward. Like
Yeah.
something that takes her out of this, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that she dies, but has like some sort of weakness or like reckoning for her failure or something like that. Because, and I say that specifically because then you could keep Darth Vader in there, even though
Mm-hmm.
he has relatively nothing to do. He just
He has
presents.
no introduction. Like literally, if this was your first experience with Star Wars ever, you'd be like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
Oh, by the way, here's how I would fix that in if I were rewriting this. Darth Vader should have been the guy from Dathomir. Like he should have escaped at the end of that fight, and his lust for revenge should have brought him to the Inquisition Citadel at the same time, because then, like, straight up, maybe he straight up murders Seer during the assault or something.
Oh yeah.
That would make sense. Like, Seer is like trying to turn the second sister, and all of a sudden this guy just shows up, blasts a part of the fortress away, and kills Seer. And then that forces you into a battle, like kind of the retreating battle, and the second sister has her redemption moment where she's like, she decides to be on the
Oh yeah.
good
Well, she would
path or
see her
whatever.
master die and not feel, she wouldn't feel glorified about it. She would actually feel guilt. We'd see character development because that's the thing. She has the most character development of everyone in this game. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Grease, we learn about him the most, but in terms of someone actually growing as a person, the second sister easily does the most and actually earns some of it. So, yeah, it seems so weird to throw her away when, yeah, Seer, her arc is done. We
Yeah.
don't need to see her again. And it's no offense to Deborah Wilson. She does the best she can. She's still my favorite Amanda Waller, but there's no reason for her to still be in this franchise.
It's just that her, like you said, her story is done. It has a complete arc. It's not super interesting, but she does the best with what she has. And there was so much potential with the second sister, and it seems weird that they just offed her with a character that had literally been on screen for like 2 seconds. Like, it would have made much more sense to, put Seer in that position where she dies while trying to turn her wayward apprentice, who is touched by her, like, entreaties, and sees her finally pay for the death of, or the deaths of the other younglings, and she turns to the light side and helps Cal get out. And I think that would have been so much better and tighter as a writing experience. And
And
yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
and
These
the,
things
that
should have
actually,
come back.
the best thing about also what that potential hypothetical scenario is, and it's perfect for what we're going to be talking about next. One of the one reason that I'm actually happy that Mirren is still part of the party by the end of Fallen Order, and I'm hoping that she survives whatever inevitable next game is coming for this, is we don't see that many stories besides the sequel movies where we've seen the light side and the dark side work together, even though obviously, by definition, balancing the force should be that the light side and the dark side should stop fighting each other. Like, literally, the entire story of the Jedi and the Sith in the Legends timeline comes down to, yeah, the Jedi didn't handle the idea of using the dark side well and have basically been muddling it up ever since. So the idea of having the second sister and Cal working alongside each other would be a really great comparison to what we see with Ben and Ray. We could have something really interesting there. And maybe they'll do it with Mirren, but they're kind of treating the magic as like this third neutral party thing, so
Yeah, that was weird.
but we could really see that because we know it works great because so many companions in Knights of the Republic 2 start out as the darkest people you could potentially be hanging out with.
Yeah, so this is where we're going to transition over out of spoiler territory and into Knights of the Old Republic to the Sith Lords territory. So if you've been... I don't know how you would tell if we're out of spoiler territory by just us saying that we are, if you have this muted or whatever, but...
The spoiler territory has been evaded. You may proceed to walk about the cabin.
Spoilers, done. Now we're going to spoil a different game, Knights of the Old Republic 2.
It's old, though, because we can do that, man.
Yes, exactly. So, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 The Sith Lords, created by Obsidian, released in late 2004, I believe.
It was, I believe, because it was developed in like just around a year because
Yeah.
LucasArts. It was around that time that LucasArts was like, "Hey, you did so great with the first one. What if we just give you a year to develop the next one?" Like they just kept doing that with their games. I don't know who kept making that call, but that person does not understand how development cycles work.
Yeah, they literally had 14 months to finish this game, to start and finish this game.
One of the best-selling RPGs of all time. You know, no pressure.
Yeah, literally the game of the year from 2003. Make a sequel in a year. And it is incredible how good Knights of the Old Republic 2 is under those conditions.
Even because that's the thing. I think we've both played it when it was at pure jank, when it was back in the day when it had all the problems like Atton's talking in that cryo chamber or stasis chamber or whatever, but his body isn't there. Okay, yep, this is all good. I mean, to give you context,
Honestly though, you say that as a joke, like, yeah, this is all good, but the critical reception of this game was incredibly stellar for the fact that, despite the fact that it was incredibly broken.
Oh yeah, it was one of Obsidian's big successes, and I'm glad for that. I'm glad that people were able to look past that. It was a day in time where I think if you could see a game's qualities, it was a lot easier for people to overlook glitches. Now we live in the world of Mass Effect Andromeda getting trashed out the gate. But, yeah, with Knights of the Republic 2, even with all the issues, it does so many stellar things. And it is worth saying for context, though, a lot of it's been fixed. Like, if you listen to us talk about it and you give it a whirl, people have restored an entire planet that was cut, for crying out loud. It is amazing what the modders have done. There's even a guy who made a semi-serious sequel that just does a total conversion of the game that's stunning in its own right. Like, there's so much available now that wasn't there at launch for Knights of the Republic 2 that, seriously, if you get the chance, check out, especially the PC version, because Aspire did an amazing job on porting it over. But regardless, I mean, we're talking like they even actually included key bindings for DualShock 3 in the PC port. Who does that? But yes, Knights of the Republic 2. Do you want to set it up what the game is all about, or?
Yeah, I mean, so my experience ran into because I was in love with the KOTOR games when they came out, like most people were, and I have played the first one probably 3 or 4 times, and I've played the second one, I think, twice. So as far as I remember, essentially, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, takes place sometime after the first game, and it stars you as the Exile, a former Jedi who has been cut off from the Force, and you. I think the game just starts and you're on the Ebon Hawk.
Oh yeah, there's an optional tutorial that gives a little bit more. You're on the Ebon Hawk as the Astromech T3, who was
Right.
he was your droid in the first game, and like everything's wrecked, everyone seems dead. The cabin where HK-47 goes has a banging noise that sounds really violent and unpleasant. Like everything is wrong, and even after you get the ship headed towards this mining facility to get help, something then comes around and trashes both of the droids. It's just like it is not fun times, and yet it's like close to 5 years after Malik got his ass kicked, and
But the thing is, it's a great introduction because you
oh yeah,
want to know what's going on so badly.
oh yeah, oh it is one hell of a tease. It's like what has gone wrong in the time since we were last here, because depending on which ending you got, and thankfully the game respects both endings, in the first Knights of the Old Republic, either Darth Revan set out to conquer the galaxy, or you saved the galaxy and everything was great, nothing is going to go wrong, best friends forever.
Well, and then the Ebon Hawk, for people who haven't played the game, the Ebon Hawk is basically your hub zone. It's your ship you fly around the galaxy in the first game. It eventually becomes that in the second game. But the fact that the second game opens with basically your home turf being completely wrecked, it's really jarring, and it sets a very I mean, we were just talking about Fallen Order and how a lot of the things in that game don't seem to thematically connect to one another. The opening of this game very much thematically connects to the rest of the game.
Yeah, I know that there's some people who complain about how long it takes Knights of the Old Republic 2 to really get started. Even like a comparison to the first one, there's basically 2 planets you have to go through before you can really explore. But I think it's great. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's fantastic that the very first place you're at in a Star Wars game feels more like it's out of Dead Space than anywhere else. It's legitimately, when I was playing it I was young at this time, and I'm like genuinely creeped out by a Star Wars game. I've never had this happen before. That's amazing. We don't really see Star Wars try and scare us, and it was willing to go there. There was a constant uncomfortable tension, and then you get to Telos, and they managed to do prequely politics, but interesting. Like you get involved, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're still just trying to get back what's yours. It's a really compelling set. Every single time something happens, it's perfectly crafted and makes sense, and the solutions are so in keeping with what an actual role-playing game should be. Because I want to make clear, the reason I actually specifically nominated KOTOR 2 over the first one is because I think the first one is a great proof of concept for making a console RPG that feels like Dungeons and Dragons. Knights of the Old Republic 2 is an actual role-playing campaign. Like, it feels like you have a real game master sitting across from you. It's virtual and everything, but otherwise, the way you can solve things becomes a lot more varied. There's more non-combat solutions to things. There's rewards for being techie or for having certain stats. It's even finally viable to wield blasters, which is not a thing that the first one really ever encouraged.
Yeah, it's so. I think one of the things that I like about the second game a lot more than I like about the first game is that the first game feels like a romp through Star Wars. It's like a kid playing with Star Wars figures and having a great time. It is a fun game. I think it's one of the best games of all time. Um, the Sith Lords feels like an actual full narrative. Um, like it's the kind of story that is diving into the trauma and trying to heal and move on. It's basically like that scene from Lord of the Rings at the end of the series where Frodo is like
It's
writing
over.
basically his goodbye note, and he's just like, some wounds just can't heal, and it's like that's basically what this game is about. Like what can you move on from, and what keeps you shackled to the past.
Which
And
is
that's
kind of fast.
super interesting.
Oh yeah, and then the surreal thing is, both of these games they talk about it, but in KOTOR 2, you're constantly feeling it. It's instead of having PTSD flashbacks to Malachor or something, instead it's you're trying to regain your power that you clearly once had. And I think that's one of the brilliant things in them starting you off as a Jedi right away, because you didn't do that in the first game. You didn't immediately have those powers from the start. Whereas in 2, yes, you have all those abilities, but your Jedi-ness isn't the key thing. You don't even have a lightsaber for potentially over 2/3 of the game if you aren't, judicious in searching and everything. So a lot of that old familiarity is just out of reach, which is especially great if you played the first one, because it feels like you're trying to get it back. It's almost a phantom limb sort of experience. And that's something really hard to accomplish, especially with an interactive experience.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I will also say that the villains of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 are the first and possibly only time that I've seen a villain like a Sith Lord in Star Wars that I actually found intimidating and scary, aside from Darth Vader. Like Darth
Oh yeah.
Nihilus, like that mask art is really intimidating, really scary. Um,
And when you learn that's all there is, like there's not even a body there anymore. He's just literally that consumed that he's just a specter crawling around like Voldemort. Or Scion, who you keep killing him. Darth Scion is Jason Voorhees as a
yeah.
Sith Lord.
The only problem I have with Darth Nihilus is that my main experiences with the Sith Lords included me hitting into a bug where I would essentially like skip the entire reason that he was showing up in the first place. So he would like literally like I teleported to his bridge. And I'm just like, what's happening right now? I don't
Oh dear.
understand. So I'm not entirely sure what his purpose was in the story. I just think his design is great and he's very intimidating.
Well, if it helps at all, believe it or not, that's not an issue specifically with KOTOR 2. That's with the engine. Because when I was revisiting KOTOR 1 not that long ago, um, somehow I glitched inside the Sith embassy at the start of Terrace, back before I had anyone besides Karth. I saved the save game because at some point I'm just curious, what happens if you play from that point on with none of the other companions? But just like apparently that's just an issue with what they, because like for context here, Alex Kane did a really great book for Boss Fight explaining this. A lot of the tech they were coming up with for these games was completely brand new. Like they had no blueprint as to how to make any of this work. There were several points when they actually had tech demos for KOTOR where it would have just been Baldur's Gate but with console controls. So I can understand some of that. I do want to say I appreciate that. Just I do really appreciate that KOTOR 2 was less heavy on trying to make you overthink the combat, because I know there's people who love tons of combat in RPGs, but I appreciate when I'm allowed to be clever for other reasons and be able to solve things for other stuff. Because like you mount a defense in KOTOR 2 when or you mount an assault. There's this whole situation with Dantooine, and you can legitimately invest resources and plan ahead. And if you do that, you're good to go. You can do all sorts of things that make it so you don't have to fight. The people of Dantooine will fight for you and beside you, and it kicks a ton of ass. Whereas you can also subvert them and make them be unable to win. There's even, I found this only in one playthrough, you can actually be an inside traitor. Like I don't know how the specific criteria, but like Rook did not realize that I was a Sith Lord screwing with his plans. So when he sees Dantooine falling, he's like, "It seems the battle is lost. Okay, I'll meet you later. I'm gonna go hide." And just I love that that's a possibility. Like I will admit I probably played the game close to 20 times because for a while there it was the one game I had that was new, so I just kept going through it, and the sheer breadth of possibilities for every scenario is great, combined with your mentor Kreia giving a moral philosophy 101 lesson throughout every single choice. It's just kind of stunning to experience it all. It should there are few RPGs this replayable.
Yeah, and Kreia. We haven't even talked about Kreia,
Oh
but
my
Kreia is
gosh.
one of the, I don't know about best, but one of the most interesting Star Wars characters in, I would say, the entire franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh yeah.
the closest I think we've ever gotten to a another version of Kreia is like disillusioned Luke Skywalker in
Mm-hmm.
in um wow, what's it called?
The Last Jedi.
Last Jedi. Yes. Um, she's amazing. She is so cryptic and so weird and so not so outside of what you expect from a typical Star Wars companion, a typical Star Wars mentor, a typical villain or supporting character. Like she wears all of the hats.
And I could swear it almost feels almost like she's even in insert like a microphone for Chris Avlon to voice his own frustrations with the Star Wars universe. It's just sort of like, and now we're going to sit back for a minute as I critique how the Jedi are bogus, but the Sith are a bunch of children, and how both of them suck. And I'm going to make it sound amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I yeah. And that's part of what I think Kreia kind of setting the tone really is what makes this game so special because it doesn't just regurgitate a lot of the concepts we've seen before. Instead it takes them and is like, well, what if we viewed them all differently? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what if we reframe a lot of the different parts of this universe that you think you know, but from a different angle they take on all kinds of different nuances and shadows and
There's no fear to Knights of the Republic 2. Like, it is willing to just do whatever it feels is best. It doesn't feel like it's beholden to anyone or afraid of upsetting someone. It just knows the story it wants to tell, and it is intent on telling it. And that's why I was saying at the beginning is I miss that because it's just so great to see someone just tell a story in this really colorful universe and make it even more vibrant. And to be the Star Wars nerd for a second, oh my gosh, they integrate so many other things into KOTOR 2. Like, there are so many references. They even fit at the end when Kreia is giving her speech. When you ask her about Mandalore, she references Attack of the Clones. She actually references Jango Fett losing his head. Like, the amount of different stuff that all just kind of weaves back into KOTOR 2 makes it feel like this nexus of lore and story all just kind of all culminating in this otherwise completely side story experience, but it still feels meaningful. And I love that it even ends on an ambiguous note. I know that's partially due to content cuts, but still, I love that it's just sort of like, okay, what happens next? I need to know what happens next.
yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like there was always the plan that they were going to get a third one.
Oh, there was. I can actually link you to concept of the
Yeah,
two companions that were supposed to happen.
but then they didn't.
LucasArts started bleeding money, and they thought that Battlefront would make more money than Knights of the Republic 3. That is the reason. That's also why we didn't get Republic Commando 2, which was going to be Imperial Commando. And there was almost even an Rogue Squadron game that was going to be centered on TIE fighter pilots. But that money got sent to the Force Unleashed
That
instead.
would have been so good.
Oh, I know!
I'm
It's
so mad.
crazy. Oh, it's like the amazing thing is LucasArts had one of the best years ever, just in general, between like say between 2001 to 2004. They had some of the best games lineup ever. Unfortunately, is around that time that the politics inside the company just went utterly shove it on head crazy. There was nothing going on but carking bullshit. It was complete madness, and that's how we ended up with the very clunky 7th gen titles that we did get, unfortunately. Like, there were a few gems here and there, but like that's why a lot of things happened the way they did. And it's a shame because I know it's been used as a meme every now and then, but when you look back at what we had during the time of Knights of the Republic 2, there just was that freedom and creativity. It wasn't just KOTOR 2. It was all of these games could do all sorts of crazy things. We had a racing game. We had 2 racing games, and they were actually decent. There's all these things like that where it's just sort of, I'm amazed that this happened and we had all this explored, whereas now there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear, and I miss that because KOTOR 2 was willing to go the distance to suggest that, hey, what if the Force is actually Cthulhu? What if this is all a really horrible mistake and you should actually kill the Force? Like, that's a super bold thing, and I want to see that again. I want to see games that reward clever, because that was another problem I didn't actually get to talk about with Fallen Order, which is that because of how limited your force meter is, you can't often be that creative in combat. It's just easier to throw everybody off a ledge or force slow everyone. So there's so much potential. We have so much potential. We have these great roots, all of these things to pull from in the past. And that is pretty much what KOTOR 2 does. It took a lot of things from other comics and books and stories and games and made it all mesh together into this beautiful experience that is highly distinctive. I can't name another game that makes you feel quite like it except for maybe Planescape Torment or Disco Elysium. So,
Which you should definitely
amazing.
check out, by the way.
Yes,
Disco Elysium.
absolutely.
It's
Oh my gosh.
very good.
Exactly. It's like we can have stuff like that in this setting. We can be bold, and we can have all sorts of crazy things like, oh yeah, you can influence your companions who are completely nice-hearted to join the dark side, or you can convince that Sith lady who's blind to join the light side while still wielding the dark side and everything, and maybe you sacrifice her to take down her boss, or maybe you don't and you actually choose to be better than that. You can be heartless, you can be kind, and your force alignment doesn't define that. You can still be nice to people while also being pale-faced, looking like death itself, and electrocuting people to death. You can
I
do these things. There's complexity, and I know I'm
yeah.
rambling, sorry.
Well, no, that's great because that kind of illustrates how great this game is. Like, it's what I appreciate is when a game doesn't necessarily force you down a binary path,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously that's much harder to do. That like complexity and a gray middle area is much harder to do. But what's interesting about Knights of the Old Republic 2 is that it essentially makes it very difficult to either do 100% light side or 100% dark side. And instead, you're expected to kind of tread this weird gray area. Like that's kind of Krea's role in all of this is to muddy your waters as much as possible, which makes it difficult. Even if you're one of those people who's like, I'm always going to make the good choice or always the bad choice because that's fun and wish fulfillment for me. Like, it makes it much more difficult. Like, and that makes it more interesting because you're having an internal struggle alongside your character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we're missing from a lot of our games. You don't get that in Fable. You don't get that in
No.
any of the Fable games. You are either the world's best hero or the world's worst villain. And that's kind of how the first KOTOR was. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's much more difficult and I think much more ideologically complex to have the gray middle area where you can then make cases for both sides.
It's fulfilling too because you feel like you've actually made a choice. Like, that is the one major thing that stands out with me for KOTOR 2 versus KOTOR 1 is in KOTOR 2, I'm making decisions based on what makes sense to me. Whereas in KOTOR 1, a lot of the choices are, do I Gary the old lady across the street or do I kick her into traffic? And how much will get me the most experience and most loot and everything? It becomes a lot more mechanical. It's something that even, like, to give a really weird comparison here, Bioshock and Bioshock 2, that sort of happened there too, where Bioshock 1 was incredibly binary, but Bioshock 2, you had a lot more middle ground. There was a ton of endings where you could have been like a jerk to the little sisters, or you could have been, awful to the people that you encounter, but nice to the other side. And it acknowledges that. And KOTOR 2 does that by 1,000-fold. You can be the worst person possible on one planet because you hated them, and then on the next one be completely nice. And there's even cases to be made for while you might be assigned a dark side or a light side for certain points, in the grand scheme of things, it might actually be the reverse. And you recognize that and you realize that it's just that the method of how you went about it was more light side or dark side, which is, it's just really fun stuff to chew on. You can be talking about any given planet in Knights of the Republic 2 for hours. Like, this podcast could have been entirely about Onderon, and we would still be talking because I have just still so many thoughts about what all went on there.
I
That is
mean,
fantastic.
I would say maybe, and this is just me kind of like speculating, maybe it, if there is a criticism, maybe Knights of the Old Republic 2 is held back by still having that alignment system.
I would go and say that. I would say that. I think that's been an issue that, I mean, it even affected BioWare's games separate from that for a while now, until Mass Effect 3 finally went like, you know what? It all adds up to the same meter. Doesn't that make more sense? That makes more sense. Okay, and we're moving.
Yeah, it's I think that there could still be room to play around with those concepts, and maybe having a meter is actually a way of playing with those concepts a little bit. And I think of the games that have had meters and awarded like light side points or dark side points, like, I think Knights of the Old Republic 2 is the one that has done it in the most interesting way.
Imagine if they separated it. Like, what if your light side and dark side mirror was actually separate from the morality? Like, literally, still be like, you approach this in a dark side light. They even tried to kind of do that with Jade Empire, but they still had a hard time with it because it was more like closed fist versus open palm, but still one tended to be nicer and one tended to be crueler. But there's potential, yeah, there's potential there that if they were ever to make choice come back to Star Wars, I could see them maybe splitting it up like how you're kind of describing here.
Well, like, you could use it as a way of critiquing, just going out on a limb here. You could use it as a way of like critiquing the Jedi or the Sith or something. Like, maybe you do something for the Jedi that gets you light side points but has a negative effect on the world, you know? Maybe you do something for the dark side that seems to benefit people. Like, it seems like there should be more nuance and balance, and I think that that's where kind of Knights of the Old Republic 2 like pointed the franchise. I don't know that it necessarily got there on this one, but just in terms of like the playing around with meters and morality, and I know that that's like an age-old question by this point. Like, that was talked into the dirt like 10 years ago. But still. I don't know. Thoughts?
I think that there's a lot that still can be chewed upon with it, which I think is
For sure.
why people keep being drawn back to it. And yeah, I think alignment systems are worth having there. But yeah, I love how you're describing it, like using it as a meta commentary, because we're in a universe now where a whole storytelling universe of meta contextuality. I mean, you don't get into the Spider-Verse without people being extremely meta about everything. And at some point, games are going to catch up in that regard. We're starting to see it a little bit here and there with some titles, but it really is starting to become a thing where we're having to think about this sort of stuff. And at some point, we do kind of just have to acknowledge that there is going to be more greater complexity. I know that there's people like Freddie Prinze Jr., all respect to him, he's a lovely voice actor and seems to be a very lovely person, but the argument is made that Star Wars is for kids, okay? And the thing is, okay, kids like to be treated seriously. Kids like to be challenged. Coraline is a kid's story, and there are parents who are horrified to watch the movie or read the book.
Yeah, let's look at some of those fairy tales as they were originally conceived as children's stories that are full of sexual assault and murder and
Star Wars almost actually had sexual assault in New Hope. That
Yeah.
was a cut thing. So like, it's not that kids can't handle complex ideas. It's how you present them. It's how you frame them. And like, if anything, that's all the more reason to explore alignment and morality and stuff like that. Because if a ton of kids love Star Wars and you encourage a healthier sense of morality using those mechanics, that's a net positive for everyone. And it also reflects well in your game. I'm way more in because like I firmly believe that I would not be the writer that I am today without Knights of the Republic 2. I firmly believe that that thing influenced so much of what I just processed about the world, and I wish that we had more like that in the franchise. Because I mean, it's that big of if you are that big, you have a responsibility to have a positive influence on things, to really make a difference with that scale of everything. And it's a perfect universe for it. It has done it before. It can do it again. We can do that. We just have to aim for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. In that this is, I think it is easy to write off Star Wars as just for kids because it has, it's kind of the space version of swords and sorcery that, and people tend to generally look down on fantasy. And despite the space setting, Star Wars is very much a fantasy genre. Um, the the issue though is that while I think you could be forgiven for thinking that Knights of the Old Republic 2 is like for kids and is simplistic or whatever, what I really admire about it is the way that it is constantly asking and reinforcing that you should be questioning your world and the
Yes.
reason you believe the things you do, and be like, maybe ultimately your perspective doesn't matter, but you should still have one. Like, and that's kind of what I admire it for, because there aren't a ton of games that are just like constantly and subtly and without being in your face about it. And I think largely this is the role of Kreia, is just like, why do you think that? Why do you believe that?
In
Is
fact, I
that
go so far
true?
as to say that I think that pretty much is the biggest problem with Fallen Order by comparison. It just I did not realize these two would entangle so much, but like Fallen Order never asks itself questions. It
Mm-hmm.
never really does. It's just sort of like, well, because, but then it never gives a reason. Whereas KOTOR 2 is constantly full of questions. It never stops thinking. And you kind of have to love it for that, because it's a lot more challenging and a lot riskier to constantly be questioning yourself. You're constantly having to self-analyze on top of your audience analyzing everything too. Like,
Also, I just want to say, unrelated to Fallen Order, because I didn't say it earlier, I really don't like Seer as a character
no.
because she's a former Jedi and is just not gonna help you do anything. She stands on the ship and is like an advisor, but she's fully capable of helping you at literally any time throughout the entire adventure, and is just sending like a young child, uh, I mean comparatively to her, to
Mm-hmm.
go and fight alone. That's her plan.
And the thing is, it's not even. She claims that she's cut off from the Force, but we later see no, 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 no. She has plenty of ability to use all of her training and everything. She just chooses not to
Yeah,
for very
exactly.
poorly written reasons.
and, and it's irritating because, like, I guess comparing it to Knights of the Old Republic, like Kreia has all the reasons not to like come out
She
and help
loses a
you.
hand for you
She
in the first
loses
hours.
exactly, like, and she's old and like she has way better reasons, and she is still constantly advising you and giving you advice, and Seer doesn't do that. Like, she doesn't explain anything, and Cal never asks questions. At least none that make any sense. Or very rarely they do make sense, but he doesn't really get good answers to any of them.
Yeah, there's
Also,
always
also the game never explained what happened to the anthropologist guy.
no. He just vanishes. He's just gone. Well, maybe we'll address him in the sequel. Maybe we'll never address him again. Who knows? I mean, at least
Was he even any good at being a Jedi?
yeah. Apparently, there's a comic that centers on him and Seer, but a tie-in comic to a tie-in video game is like, I know I'm praising the Knights of the Republic comic, but the thing is, the reason the KOTOR comic works is because as much as it sets up Revan and Malak and everything, it actually does a really good job of fleshing out Malak. It's both standalone and it's not critical to have experienced the games or to read the comic to experience the other piece of media. Whereas Jedi Fallen Order Dark Temple, I don't know what it has to do with the game, but even if it fills in all of the gaps, I'm just left asking, why wasn't it in the game then? We already have demonstrated that psychometry is an ability, which also just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see it there, but there's no setup. Like, it's so confusing that Cal apparently is blocked from using the most basic Jedi abilities ever, but he has two of the most advanced powers from the get-go.
Oh, I do have to say, one of the parts I really liked about Fallen Order was when the second sister used that ability against him.
Oh, that was fantastic.
That was like the smartest action set piece that happened in that game.
It figures she's the smartest person in any room. My gosh. I genuinely, I am looking at her walking into any scene, and it's like, in her head, she must be thinking, you are all the stupidest nerf herders in the entire galaxy, and I keep having to clean up your mess. I do not get paid enough for this.
Does she even get paid at all?
It's complicated depending on which timeline we're talking about. In the old one, yes, but who knows with the new one? They keep killing off and then adding Inquisitors, so maybe at some point we'll learn the answer.
I want like an office like comedy set in the accounting department of the Empire. Like just, oh man, we can't keep up with all of these Inquisitors that keep coming on and off our books. One was on literally for like 2 days. Got cut down by a Jedi. Damn shame.
Yeah, we're about at that point. But yeah, in general, if you haven't already played it, play Knights of the Republic 2. It is a fantastic experience. It typically will only cost you like $2.50 when on sale, and it'll come with the first one. It has a beautiful PC port, and if for whatever reason you are just horribly averse to PC and don't mind having to put up with the jank, the Xbox version does play on Xbox One. I understand it was even actually, here's the irony, KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 were apparently bundled with Fallen Order in some of the Xbox One bundles. So, at the very least, it's a great consolation prize.
So I would say that you should, like, while you can play it on Xbox One, 100% try and get your hands on PC versions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not good at dealing with mods, you can buy Knights of the Old Republic 2 on Steam. And Steam has a helpful tool that will help you just download a bunch of the mods and install them very easily.
Some of them are even apparently included by default now. Apparently Aspire actually patched a bunch. They worked with the modders to get official approval from them to patch it in. So
oh, that's awesome.
A bunch of the, and but yeah, on Steam Workshop, you just click on the Steam Workshop tab and you can choose what other mods to download. Not all of the Knights of the Republic 2 mods are there, but several of the most notable ones are. And if you
like
are
the restored
PC...
content mod is
yeah, there's that, and there's the droid planet that got restored. If you actually are curious about what I mentioned before about that fan sort of sequel total conversion mod, it's called the Jedi Masters. You can look it up online. It finally is fully voiced. At first, it didn't have voicing for like half the characters, but now it's fully voiced. You're gonna need to be a little bit more PC savvy to get that all set up, but if you want something that's got a lot of humor and just full of lots of goofy Star Wars love, that's there too. If you've already played KOTOR 2 and you're just looking for something else to do with the darn game, because goodness me, EA isn't in any hurry.
So yeah, I would definitely say that this is one of the best games. Period. This is real good, and I'm saying that as someone who played like the broken version of this. So my initial 2 times playing this game, I still need to find time to go back and play with the restored content, but I didn't fully understand who Darth Nihilus was, or I understood like who and what he was, but I didn't understand like what he was doing at the end of the game. And also, there was a huge section that would just skip after I killed the other Sith Lord. What's his name?
Scion.
Darth Scion. It would just skip straight to Krea's fight. So I'm not really sure. I also there was like a bunch of content skips, so I was really confused about everything that happened on Malachor 5.
Oh yeah,
And
the whole ending
yeah.
there was a ton of stuff. Well, there was an entire other section on Telos involving HK-47 that didn't have been. Apparently, all the files were there, like the voice lines and everything. It just
Okay, yeah,
needed
I
a few
never
patches.
experienced any of that.
But yeah, there's whole sections that just. It's a shame they couldn't get them in time. I really, it's a tragedy that LucasArts was so intent on forcing the games out so quickly. It's fun fact, that's also why Battlefront 2's campaign feels so tacked on, because literally they were making it as a multiplayer only game and they're like, no, a Star Wars game has to have a campaign. So they grabbed Tamura Morrison and they're like, okay, we're going to give you some lines to narrate and then we're just going to hastily make some instant action maps be a campaign thing. It just so it's not even just
Wow.
KOTOR 2. It's
Wow.
kind of insane the production some of the people had to do there,
And
but
how good
yeah,
a bunch of those games turned out.
yeah, it is truly a credit to every developer on all of those titles that they managed to make it work because they were dealing with Crazy Town, and once again, just speaks to how talented Obsidian has been all over these years, and especially with what they produced here.
Agreed. Um, yeah, it's real. I would, I guess, sorry to kind of back up a little bit. I experienced the broken version of this game, and it was already better than most games are that are already 100% finished.
Mm.
With the restored content, this is easily up there among the best games of all time. I would say that this is better than the first Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh yeah.
I would put this as potentially being the best Star Wars game of all time.
I'd be pretty okay with that. I'd be pretty fine with that,
Yeah.
especially the best Star Wars role playing experience in any kind of capacity of feeling like you are really in the Star Wars universe. It is easily the best one to feel immersed in it, to feel engaged on every single level with it. It might not have the most engaging boss battles for you personally, or it might not, be as stunningly shiny because yes, there's some much prettier ones.
2004.
Yeah,
2004.
exactly. But if you can look past that, it's easily just the purest express. I would say it's the purest expression not only of Star Wars but of the best of the Legends timeline. Like, there's a lot of people these days who are just kind of like, oh, Legends, oh, that sucks. It's like, yeah, the 80s novels sucked. Kevin J. Anderson can't write. We all know this. But there's a lot of other stuff that did come around in the 2000s that was amazing, and KOTOR 2 is just the pinnacle of that. KOTOR 2 is what could have been that was achieved then. So if you're wondering why anyone ever bothered, play it. You'll understand.
Yeah. It, again, to kind of reiterate, the mechanics might be a bit old. The graphics might not be quite as pretty. But gosh darn, it has some of the best writing in RPGs, period. Not just Star Wars, but RPGs, period.
And voiceover, such a great cast. It's
Yeah.
insane.
And you don't have to deal with Karth. There's no Karth
Yeah,
Onesi. I mean, well, he's in there, but we don't talk about him.
only if you choose certain things. There's ways to avoid him entirely, kids. So, maybe Revan went crazy. That's okay. You can choose that option and then you're good.
Um, well, with that, do you have anything you want to shout out that you're working on? Any cool projects that you have in
Well,
the
I will
works?
say, I'm going to be talking about some more Star Wars stuff, but it's definitely going to be weirder. I'm exploring what may be the only 3D Star Wars Java game for my channel.
What?
It's weird, and it's kind of like almost a sequel to TIE Fighter, yet not, because it doesn't play at all like TIE Fighter. It's weird. And
Very
I'm
weird.
also looking into some of the handheld games because, like, believe it or not, there's a Tomb Raider style game called Lethal Alliance that stars a Twi'lek named Rihanna. Yes, before the musician was popular, it was a complete coincidence, and oh my gosh, I'm sure whoever
Wait, what
chose the
is this
name
game?
Star Wars Lethal Alliance. It's about this Twi'lek who saves herself from slavery and then teams with a droid, and even ends up helping Kyle Katarn from the Jedi Knight games get some of the Death Star plans. So, like, that sounds really neat. I want to see more of that.
Wait, I
And
thought the Bothan spies got the Death Star plans.
oh, let's not get into Operation Skyhook. It's just too darn complicated. That is one of the things that was not elegant about Legend. How are there like 15 different Star Wars Death Star plans? And it's like, we have an explanation. I know it seems weird, but yes. But so that in general, Unabridged Gamer, and I'm going to be actually talking about the Call of Duty Black Ops series further on my channel. I talked about the first one.
Whew, that's a lot to
Second one,
unpack.
that oh my gosh, that is, and like I'm really excited to talk about the third one. I really wish the fourth one didn't exist. But I'm really excited to talk about the third one because there's a lot of things there that were unexpected. But yeah, that's gonna be something I'm gonna be talking about for this month. The only reason the second one isn't up yet is I caught my mom's cold a bit. My
Oh
voice is a little bit better
no.
now, but that held things up a bit. So that's a thing. And also, yeah, obviously on Escapist, you can find my review of Jedi Fallen Order if you still need to hear me tell you more about how I did not enjoy playing it. Or if you want to read Second Look, where I talk about all sorts of underappreciated games. And I say that I love that series, especially because the developers come out for it. Like when I talked about Lost Planet 3, I heard not only from the lead actor, who apparently is directing films now, but
What?
yeah, seriously, he directed Pete Made a Maze or something like that. It was an indie film that won. And apparently
Okay.
the writers for Lost Planet 3, yeah, you can thank them for God of War PS4. That was what they moved on to next after Lost Planet 3. But
You know
I
what?
talked
Lost Planet deserved better.
I wish we could have seen the payoff to what they were teasing at the end of Lost Planet 3. It looked so amazing. We would have had a female-led Lost Planet game with that level of writing. Oh my gosh, sign me the hell up. But I just did a piece on Rage and about how it's okay to have an open world game that's not 80 plus hours, and just you can find a lot of stuff there. And obviously, you may have caught Jack when she was on the Noobcast podcast. I also am a regular on there, so be sure to also check that out. But otherwise, just you'll probably hear me ranting, possibly in Mandoa on Twitter every now and then. So yeah, that's the thing. But just Unabridged Gamer pretty much everywhere, and Second Look and The Escapist. I'm sorry, I'm really rambling now.
No,
I got
no,
way
it's
too
okay.
excited.
Here's a question I think everyone who's going to listen to this is going to wonder at this point.
Oh
Can
dear.
you actually speak Star Wars languages?
I have a very limited appreciation for Mandoa. Like, understand, I have to. There's an actual dictionary. Because, fun fact, Karen Travis, before Star Wars: The Clone Wars trounced Mandalorian culture, wrote an entire dictionary. It's not fully comprehensive, but it's long enough to last like over 12 pages, and it has full phrases and everything of Mandoa. The thing is, though, I can easily give you one of the most insulting things that you could say to call someone an idiot. Nervot. Nervot. I can also tell you that Onvod means onward brother slash sister. Gender is always neutral in Mandoa, so that's an interesting thing. And just like all the terms are just unisex for everything. There's no gendered terms or anything like that, which is kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, oh, and by the way, I want to just shout out here if I'm talking about Mandalorian lore for a second. Karen Travis had a gay Mandalorian couple in her novels years before anything done by Disney started to try to introduce queer characters. The woman kicked ass.
Hell
Read
yeah.
her Republic Commando books. Seriously, and unfortunately she didn't get to finish them because Filoni's writing team ended up she seriously quit Star Wars writing altogether because they kept retconning before she could finish writing the next book. So
Oof.
yeah, that sucked. But the upside is she still got her ending because before she got cut out in the Legacy of the Force books, she got to sneak in the ending. So she still got that. So it's just like, good for you. You would have earned that. My gosh. But yeah, just seriously, if you're looking into Legend stuff that's good like KOTOR 2, Republic Commando books, absolutely fantastic. Probably the closest Star Wars has ever had to military sci-fi fiction that feels grounded. Excellent stuff. I'm going to start rambling now, I promise.
um, yeah, I have some interesting things in the works myself. We're tweaking the show a little bit. Coming up here, I think we're gonna be able to get Naomi back to do some more slash maybe even finish our women and tropes and games series, which is super fun. There are 2 episodes of it already, and we are hopefully going to be recording more soon. Maybe next week. Who knows? And yeah, then we'll be having a couple more guests are kind of in the wings. I have not been recording over the past 2 months, so this is literally the first time I've been able to talk about games, and I'm so excited that this show went on for like 2 hours. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us. Thank you, chat. I appreciate each and every one of you. And to all of you viewers who watch after the stream is done, I appreciate you too, and I appreciate the people who are going to be listening to this in podcast form, edited podcast form. So thank you so much. And I was about to end, but Elijah, where can people find you?
Just pretty much on Twitter and on YouTube as Unabridged Gamer, and on The Escapist, just I'm Elijah Beahm. You'll probably find me most recently on every week as Second Look.
Okay. And as for this show, this has been the Best Games Period, and you can find us on SoundCloud, Libsyn, podcasting apps in general, where we also live stream on Twitch and YouTube when we record shows. I'm going to hopefully start live streaming the editing sessions that I do for patrons on patreon.com/bestgamesperiod, so you can just kind of hang out with me and maybe AMA, ask me some questions. We'll just hang out and chill. It'll be a good time. And beyond that, please subscribe, like, listen, leave a review, all that good stuff. And gosh, I'm gonna turn on this music here. We'll do this one.
Oh.